sirens, firecrackers going off. Some were told aimed at police officers who were commended by Police Commissioner Shields for their restraint as they were confronted by the crowd.
People throwing commercial-grade fireworks at them, blocking, pushing, being very combative, verbally and physically, right? Blocking their path, slowing things down, creating a total health situation when you can't get fire trucks and AMR, which is the ambulance company, down to the shooting victims.
Commissioner Shields said they purposely, in their planning to deal with a street takeover event, did not seek mutual aid from other police agencies.
And we increased our overtime manpower by approximately 150% over last year to ensure that we had sufficient personnel. We don't want to create a police state. It is a balancing act. And I'm also acutely aware the more police we throw to a problem, the greater likelihood we have an officer-involved shooting.
But then, with guns on scene and shootings,
we attempted to make arrests at the front end of the evening, and what we found was our officers were being surrounded by individuals, and it became a safety issue, and then crowd control took over. So you would think there would be a huge number of arrests, but the reality of it is we were just overwhelmed on managing the crowd size.
Shields says with an intelligence warning, officers sought cooperation beforehand from neighborhood businesses and residents, but the crowd still came. Some police observations.
People who attended this event were from other parts of Erie County. It wasn't just the underserved. They were from areas of Lancaster. There were a lot of kids that actually came in Ubers. We had multiple cars parked on different streets. So while many kids did walk to the area from their particular homes, Ubers dropped these kids off in the parking lots.
Then, fortunately, no injuries in an alarming attack on the South Buffalo home of a police officer who responded to another fight nearby.
Some individuals targeted his home. We're getting conflicting reports on whether shots were fired into the house or whether objects were thrown to shatter the windows.
Mayor Sean Ryan reacting Monday afternoon, first noting acts of violence against our police officers, their families, or their homes will not be tolerated. People who engage in acts of violence against our officers are despicable and will be brought to justice. The mayor adding street takeover events will not be tolerated as well. They are dangerous to participants, bystanders, and residents, and destructive and disrespectful to communities. On your side, Ron Plants, Channel 2 News.
It wasn't just the underserved. They were from areas of Lancaster, and they were also from families potentially that would not be considered in the underserved.
That remark put a burr under the saddle of Lancaster Town Supervisor Robert Leary.
I was shocked and appalled to hear that, the generalization of them saying that Lancaster was somehow responsible for the violence that was occurring in the city of Buffalo.
And what's more,
talking about the underserved kids in Buffalo and kind of intimating that the kids from Lancaster were privileged. So that sounds more like some type of political type of statement.
Is anybody arrested?
You would think there would be a huge number of arrests, but the reality of it is we were just overwhelmed on managing the crowd size.
with no arrests, so how could they say there were people from Lancaster?
Did they walk around with signs on their heads or something saying, "I'm from Lancaster"?
There's people with bumper stickers on cars. We did license plate runs on cars, and it showed where they lived.
They were busy running license plates that night to find out where people were from?
We have license plate readers in cars, so our license plate readers are constantly gathering data.
By midday, Leary, who'd had a 26-year career in federal law enforcement, says his police department had spoken with Buffalo's.
And Chief McAllister explained to our assistant chief that they were dealing, again, I don't know how they knew, but they were dealing with one person from the town of Lancaster. So he had Lancaster on his mind during the press conference, and that's why he stated they were from outside and mentioned Lancaster, and he apologized now to my assistant police chief.
But it appears as of earlier today the fence had not been entirely mended.
So I'm going to ask for a press release, an apology and a press release to indicate, hey, he messed up. The chief, misspoke at this point in time.
The controversy aside, Mayor Ryan says the city will explore legal action to possibly recover the cost of police overtime and damage to city property against the street party promoter, who thus far hasn't been charged with anything, but to whom he had a message.
Knock it off. Knock it off. It's only serving you. But I would also say no one will ever work with you in the future now, because you've got 2 years in a row of chaos, gunshots, property damage tied to your name. So you're not going to get anywhere with these strategies.
Republican lawmakers who do not represent the city of Buffalo stood in front of City Hall calling for tougher crime policies after 11 people were shot at 6 locations in Buffalo in just a matter of hours in and around East Sullivan Avenue during what was described as a street takeover.
Protecting the public needs to be upheld as a priority, and it is not optional.
This group says Democrats' soft crime policies led to a revolving door justice system.
Violent offenders no longer fear the consequences of the crimes that they commit. Respect for law enforcement has been replaced by a mob mentality that threatens the very safety of our officers as well as the people and communities that they fight to protect.
Once again, they called for repealing bail reform laws, revising the state's raise the age law, and making it harder for early prison release.
I would encourage Sean Ryan to look in the mirror, because he was part of the legislature that passed these pro-criminal policies like bail reform and raise the age. And now he's one of the local leaders that stand by these policies and allow this lawlessness to continue.
But I'm very glad to hear that Republican colleagues from the suburbs are concerned. Because after all, there's been a tragic murder in Clarence this year, a triple murder in Cheektowaga, murder in Tonawanda. So I feel their pain about the violence in their communities.
Has anybody here, since you're speaking out about it, driven down East Sullivan, seen those streets, talked to the people to see what they feel is the solution?
All the people here have had conversations with all of the folks in their communities. Nobody wants to come downtown if they don't feel safe.
But specifically to East Sullivan.
Yeah, I know that we've had individuals within our party that have spoken to community folks in that community.
For many years, I patrolled the section of East Sullivan and Cheektowaga and all of those side streets. If you live in a neighborhood that is high in crime, it's comforting to see a police car on your street.
On your side in Buffalo, Claudine Ewing, Channel 2 News.
He will be sadly missed by all of us. It was really difficult to come to work. He really was an amazing kid.
Jalen Rios worked at the Niagara Falls Boys and Girls Club and Maple Avenue Elementary after graduating from Niagara Falls High School in 2023. Joelle Waters says families have shared uplifting stories about Rios since he was killed this weekend. She says he made a point to spread positivity.
Made sure that the children who maybe wouldn't necessarily fit in had somewhere to fit in.
Another victim of gun violence, Jayla Brown, graduated from Niagara Falls High School last year. The new superintendent of Niagara Falls City Schools says both victims left a lasting impact on the school district.
Jayla has, through her high character, through her quality relationship that she established, and what I've learned about her over the course of the last 24 hours has really made a positive impact on folks.
The Niagara Falls City School District, Niagara Falls City Council, and SNUG have teamed up to offer 2 opportunities this week for healing and support. Representatives from Niagara Falls SNUG say they have additional resources for those who are grieving.
We work to reduce gun violence, and we do that by mediating conflict, and we work with the highest risk of individuals that's doing the shooting or have been shot themselves. And what are we doing right now for the families? We brought the families into the office.
We're just holding a community circle, allowing for those who've been affected by this weekend to meet, to discuss, just allowing that therapeutic setting.
The U.S. Attorney's Office says the FBI was notified by Scottish authorities of Buffalo priest Jeffrey Nowak. They say he was involved in an international child exploitation ring. FBI agents searched Nowak's home Wednesday, and they say they recovered multiple electronic devices, including folders that allegedly contained child abuse material. The diocese says Nowak has been on permanent leave since 2019. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, this is an international investigation. The FBI was notified by Scottish authorities of Jeffrey Nowak. The FBI received information related to a Telegram group whose members participated in group Zoom calls where the members were allegedly observed viewing and sharing child abuse material.
I think as the search of all the electronics is conducted, we will have a better understanding as to what his role was in this. So at this juncture, I can't definitively say if he was just a participant and organizer at this juncture, because the investigation is still too premature.
A priest that was entrusted with performing sacred things, it seems like no, he was connected to the profane, to our arch enemy, Satan, who is for destruction of life, especially innocent life.
Jeffrey Nowak is due back in court for a detention hearing on Monday. On your side in Buffalo, Chelsea Swift, Channel 2 News.
2 St. Louis Place is a monumental shift in how the city of Buffalo can tackle slumlords.
2 St. Louis Place in Buffalo's historic Allentown neighborhood has sat vacant for years. Neighbors say the building has been a hotspot for trespassers, drugs, and violence.
They've seen deceased individuals on the porch, open drug use, vagrancy.
But soon the property will get a new lease on life.
The neighbors want to see that building up to productive use and people living there.
Councilmember Mitch Nowakowski has long called for the courts to hand the building over to the city. When that finally happened late last year, he called it a turning point. Now the city finally gets to hand it over to a developer that can give it a makeover that the building and the neighborhood deserve.
There are big apartments in there. They have some of the best views really of Allentown, and they want it to be a contributing part of the fabric of their neighborhood, their street, and their block. They want to have neighbors. What's a neighborhood without a neighbor?
The city's request for proposals hopes to find not just any developer, but the right one committed to preserving the building's history and its place in Allentown.
There is no appetite at all for someone to purchase a property and demolish the structure. I think it's a perfect job for a smaller developer to make this a wonderful building that is bringing in density, vibrancy, and neighbors and people living back on that street.
Nowakowski hopes that this process sends the message that other blighted buildings could be next.
So for the city and myself to win abandonment proceedings on this property are now a template for the law department on other tools that can be used to take abandoned and derelict houses into its inventory to then put it into the proper hands. Nothing ventured is nothing gained, and this is a big win for Allentown.
Yeah, 56-year-old Bin Chow entered a plea deal this afternoon, and he could face up to 4 years in prison. Following a fatal bus crash on the New York State Thruway in August of last year, bus driver Bin Chow pled guilty to 5 counts of criminally negligent homicide. 5 passengers were killed in this accident and dozens were injured. In the courtroom, the Genesee County District Attorney stated Chow told investigators before the crash he bent down to pick up a water bottle, then lost control of the bus, causing it to roll. This afternoon, Chow was very emotional in the courtroom. His attorney explains why he took the plea deal.
There's a tremendous amount of risk going to trial in any case. And in this case, I feel that given the number of people who lost their lives and the way it affected the community and all of the people who were injured, that it wasn't going to be a situation where you had a great amount to gain. I felt like at the end of the case, a win for this would be a criminally negligent homicide.
I'm satisfied that he took responsibility. I think there's a sentencing range that's sufficient to give the judge an opportunity to impose a sentence that is going to make him fully accountable for the deaths of these people.
Chow's attorney says if this case had went to trial and he was convicted of manslaughter, he could have faced 15 years in prison. Chow is scheduled to be sentenced on Wednesday, September 9th. On your side in Batavia, Chelsea Swift, Channel 2 News.
Superintendent Dr. Pascal Mubenga.
So my first year was pretty much to be able to assess the community, what we have in place, and have some quick wins.
He expects to see a bump in student assessments results.
Priority number 1 is student achievement.
And reducing the deficit. Dr. Mubenga wasn't shy when asked about school safety, violence, and the Hutch Tech student staff member fight we saw on social media.
Incident like that is very unfortunate. Students should know not to put their hands on adults and not even fighting among themselves. I cannot comment too much who started. I have all the details, but I cannot comment on that. But this is what I'll say. It was one incident that should not jeopardize the reputation of a great school like Hutch Tech.
But starting to hear people come out of the woodwork now saying,
I was a teacher or a teacher aide, and, I've been hit with child abuse. What is happening?
Anything that's come to me, we will go to the legal departments that we have. Folks exaggerate sometimes. That's why the media have to come to the right source, superintendent of the district, then I'll give all the facts. We're not pushing anything under the rug.
We saw what happened in the city over the weekend, the 4th of July weekend. These young people, many of them are Buffalo Public School students. What's needed to get their mindset right? Do we need an alternative school again?
We voted on a new model of alternative school, which is going to start from 8 a.m. all the way to 8 p.m.
It will start for the 27-28 school year.
That is going to be also a game changer. And again, is that just one thing that's going to solve all the problems? No. Alternative program, alternative school will not be the only solution to the problems that we're facing in our society.
As for the recent resignation of a school board member, he calls it unfortunate.
Cindy McKicken was a good one.
The board sets the vision. The superintendent runs day to day.
I'm trying to navigate that chaos without really impacting the work that we have to do.
And he remains optimistic. On your side, Claudine Ewing, Channel 2 News.
Cheektowaga police say in New York State you can't ride an e-bike or e-scooter if you're under 16 years old. They also say it's illegal to ride these devices on sidewalks.
It's so important to us that we spread the message of the education, because when you think bicycle, you think a pedal assist bicycle. So we're seeing operators as young as 9 years old involved in accidents where they're injured because the parents just aren't aware that they shouldn't be on these devices.
Schmidt says there's also an important difference between an e-bike and an electric motorcycle. He says electric motorcycles must be registered and insured, and riders must have a driver's license.
The manufacturers don't care. They'll sell you whatever bike they can. They'll sell you an electric motorcycle and call it an e-bike. But an electric motorcycle, it has to be registered, it has to be insured, you have to have a license.
Last year, Cheektowaga police responded to 14 e-bike crashes. So far this year, there have been 4. Schmidt says right now the goal is to spread the word about e-bike safety.
Our goal is always voluntary compliance. We want to educate the community so they understand the way to operate these safely, and we want them to engage with that. Only if voluntary compliance fails are we going to move into issuing tickets.
Neighbors in Niagara County are raising concerns tonight about potential dangers right outside their homes. They say a new study has revealed radioactive pollution in their yards. 2 on your side's Kelly Dudzik in the studio with the latest. Kelly?
Dave, some of those neighbors joined with activists and politicians in the town of Niagara this afternoon for a press conference demanding some answers. They say they were alerted about a new report revealing radioactive pollution that's been found in the yards of 120 homes in the town of Niagara. The families say an EPA and New York State DEC study revealed, quote, highly radioactive thorium pollution in their yards, and now they want their properties added to the state Superfund program immediately. One homeowner said today that she's frustrated with the lack of information she's getting.
I don't think I'll ever feel safe here again. Upon doing more research, I found that they did a gamma study in 1986. Based on my interpretation of that, it appears there was high readings in this area and in this neighborhood. If state agencies knew and did not conduct follow-up testing until now, that raises some serious questions.
I reached out to the governor's office and a spokesperson told me, quote, assessment conducted jointly by DEC and EPA is being done out of an abundance of caution based on the region's industrial legacy. DEC and EPA, in coordination with the State Department of Health, have been working closely with property owners and local governments to investigate any areas needing additional data to help determine next steps. Meanwhile, State Senate Republican leader Rob Ort also issued a statement calling on the state and EPA to give the homeowners answers. On your side, Kelly Dudzik, Channel 2 News.
There's a book library.
Youth volunteers for the East Side Stewards spent their Saturday in July building a free book library for the East Side. 10 days later, it was stolen.
Nails are still here. It's hot out, so you went through a struggle to try to take this off, and I don't understand why.
Neighbors of the community garden off Bailey and Dartmouth say that they saw groups of young kids vandalizing the library. It is unclear who stole not just the books, but the entire structure.
Seeing it vandalized by the very folks that live in the same community
I think there needs to be a lot more work done to help provide productive outlets for these young folks.
The book collection was built to create more literacy activities for the area. It is a resource that University District Council member Rashid Wyatt says is crucial to the East Side.
We know that we have some challenges in our school system. And so this is a way to give resources to families who may not have access to go to the library, resources to read to their children. And we're going to do everything we can to support them.
The East Side Stewards, a group dedicated to revitalizing the East Side of Buffalo, says that this setback won't deter them from future projects.
We're disappointed, but we're not discouraged. We put the word out to the community, and there's been a lot of interest in donating to help us bring another one back.
Their message to the community: to keep creating activities that allow kids to be kids.
They need all the different activities that the city of Buffalo can offer to them so that they don't have to resort to grouping up in destructive groups and, working to destroy the things that are meant to serve us.
On your side in the University District, Maura Vaughn, Channel 2 News.
The Buffalo Bills said they made an organizational decision not to have OJ's name in the Ring of Honor inside of the new stadium. That is not sitting well with members of the community here in Buffalo, people who have been Bills fans for decades. They want his name there, and they want to know why it isn't there. And if it isn't, they say, put it there.
They call themselves the Committee to Preserve O.J. Simpson's place in Buffalo Bills legacy.
He became the first athlete in NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards in regular season games.
For them, this is about Simpson getting the job done on the football field, not his personal life, the death of his ex-wife, and other legal issues.
And for 32 years, his name has remained on the Wall of Fame. Why now? Why now when the Erie County taxpayer and Western New York taxpayer and New York State taxpayer have donated millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for their new stadium?
Buffalo Bills President of Business Operations, Pete Gwelly, said in a statement, "We have made an organizational decision that he is not a fit to display inside our new stadium and family circle." Simpson remains one of the most accomplished players in franchise history. He remains in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
You cannot erase history. You cannot rewrite history.
And now there's a petition circulating asking the Bills to retain OJ's name.
They said mafia means family. Well, family requires a family discussion. And this part of the family wasn't consulted.
Absolutely.
This part of the family was omitted and left out and not taken into consideration. So we are asking for the Buffalo Bills, if our motto is family, if we are living by the creed of family, then this should be a family decision because O.J. Simpson is one of our very own.
On your side in Buffalo, Claudine Ewing, Channel 2 News.